All right, I think we're live.
Do this thing. What's up, everybody? We got Caleb and Matthew. We are coming to you from two different time zones, and we're picking up a third guest. David is unable to join us, but for those that are new, if you don't know the drill, this is episode, I believe, 9. I think
It is.
I
Yep, episode 9.
Episode 9. We've been going for over 2 months now. Once we run out of fingers, I don't know what we're gonna do because I don't like showing my feet on camera. It's not that kind of show. For those that are new, this is Books and Bourbon, the part of your week. We do this every Thursday where we talk a little bit about bourbon and a lot of bit about books. So we are a community of booksellers primarily. Matthew has constantly been getting on my case to update my background. So we've got nice signs now. We've got a good mic.
Ooh, I like the sign.
So hopefully that'll help distract from everything else going on.
Wait,
But
you just changed that sign, didn't you?
Huh?
Did you just put that sign there, or was I missing that earlier today?
No, it's been there all along for the last 6 minutes when you
Oh,
turned
okay. I was gonna say, wow, I don't know how I didn't notice that before. No, that
Nope,
looks good.
dug it out of the closet, so we're happy to have that back up. So yeah, for those that are here, drop your name, let us know where you're from. We do like crowd interaction, so if you do have questions along the way, feel free to chime in, and be sure to heckle and ask good questions of our guests as well. So we're glad you're here. Thanks for sharing your most precious resource with us. That is your time, and we're going to make sure these are worth your while, both from a just understanding perspective, understanding what's possible out there in the world of business, and then hopefully giving some little efficiency hacks or tips to kind of grow your game to the next level. I've had a few people bother me and say we never talk about what we're reading. So Matthew, are you reading anything fun right now?
I'm actually still reading the same book I was the last time we talked about this. I don't have it right here. It's called The Hawk Method. It's the marketing book. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. I've been reading slower recently. I haven't been reading as often as I was. So I'm like 3/4 of the way through it. It's a marketing book called The Hawk Method by Eric Huberman. I believe his last name is Huberman. Yeah, Eric Huberman. He's had a marketing firm for a while. He's a young guy. He's about my age, but I think his firm's probably worth almost about $200 million now just doing marketing for other companies. And so he's very experienced with it. And that's just what I'm trying to learn right now is upgrade my marketing game. So.
Well, so if those of you that are here because Matthew tricked you into figuring out how to sell books, Matthew's doing his job. So that's pretty cool. I always like picking your brain on what you're studying on the marketing front. I'm dusting off this one. I got a separate book. I'll shout out Lorenzo. He tried to get him on as a guest, but he didn't want to do it. But Jocko Willink, I think Lorenzo actually trains at his gym in California, but he's got a couple books. You probably have yours right there.
Right here. I was going to say, I think I have it right here.
The first time we met, Lorenzo gave me a signed copy with my name on it from Jocko.
I remember that.
Sweet. So it's
also a Discipline Equal Freedom book.
There you go.
I think I have a third book by him up here too somewhere. That's funny.
And
I like Jocko.
You saw Jocko, didn't you? At an
What'd
event?
you say?
Did you go see Jocko at an event?
I did. Yeah, I actually got to talk to him for a little while too, which is kind of cool.
Cool.
It was. I was at his. He has a leadership event he puts on in different places, and there was one in the area that I saw coming up. So I did his leadership event, and it was really, really good. I liked it, but there was a ton of people there, so I was like, it's not going to be possible for me to have a conversation with him. And we went to another room, not the main room where we're all meeting him, but another room to eat lunch. Everyone was sitting eating lunch. There was no tables left, and there's people standing up outside. I was like, I'm just gonna go sit back at my table in the main event area and eat there. So I brought my food back in there. I was sitting there. There was 3 or 4 other people in the room. And then I noticed Jocko had just finished up his meal, and he was sitting on the edge of the stage just waiting there. So I went over and had a conversation with him for a good 5-10 minutes before other people realized he was over there and started lining up to talk to him. So it was kind of a cool experience to talk to him for a little while by accident. So
that's cool. Well, you're very disciplined, so I feel like you two could be cut out of the same cloth somewhat.
Jocko has a kid's book as well. I've read that to my son. I'm actually on book 3 with my son right now of Jocko's kids books. They're called The Warrior Kid. It is the best kids books I've ever read before. All the other kids books are kind of put to shame by his books. We started reading it. My son begs us to read it to him every single night. And so I read him a chapter, and my wife reads him a chapter, and we've gone through 3 books so far with it. And so it's a really, really good book to read to your kids if you guys haven't heard of that before. Warrior Kid is, I think, what it's called.
Perfect. Well, I'll have to add that to the repertoire as well. Well, cool. Thanks for sharing what you're reading. If you guys are watching and reading anything of substance, or even if it's just something for fun, let us know that as well. Well, without further ado, we should introduce our guest. We have somebody else here from Pennsylvania, and that's where our guest is from. So this week's guest is from Pennsylvania, as I just mentioned. He comes to a lot of the industry events. We've met him at a couple of Romer's events. He's been to our Turn the Page events. I think he went to Greg Murphy's events back in the day. So our guest, he likes to travel a fair bit. He's a pretty good networker, and I really like the way he's pursued business. So without further ado, let's introduce John.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hello. Are you in Pennsylvania right now, or are you out and about?
I am in Pennsylvania right now.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing an hour or so of your day with us. We're really glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
For those, obviously, everybody's learning. I don't know who started this trend, but he's got his Instagram handle there. If you want to just take out your phones real quick and go give him a follow at Side Hustle Experiment. You've got a YouTube channel as well, I think.
Yeah, YouTube. Just past the 1,000 mark. Finally.
Nice. So you can.
Is it same name, Side Hustle Experiment on YouTube as well?
Yes.
Same. Okay.
Perfect. So give him a follow. Why should you care about the show? John is somebody that had a day job, started doing books on the side, ramped up quickly, eventually switched gears, got into bulk, and now he's transitioning again and trying to kind of get his bulk business running without him, and then getting into the world of online arbitrage. He shares a ton of content on Instagram. I think he's got nearly 1,000 posts at this point, so be sure to check that out. He does some funny reels, some good content as well. And he sold a book for, I think, $2,200. So we'll talk about that later in the show as well. So hopefully that'll be the hook. I'm not as experienced at marketing as Matthew is, but that might keep you around for a little bit. So we're glad you're here, John. Excited to dive into your story. But first, this is Books and Bourbon. So what is everybody drinking today?
I'll let you go first, John. Do you have something?
I'm going to pull a page out of your book. I know sometimes you do beer. So I have a double broken Heels from New Trail Brewing. It's a brewery in Pennsylvania, probably one of my favorite breweries. Been there once. It's in Williamsport, I think. They just make really, really good beer. This is their double IPA of their famous Broken Heels beer.
That looks really good.
Well, I know you are a big beer guy. We actually, I think the last time we hung out was Miami at Avery's Miami, I guess, 2022 event. And we shared a pretty good meal with David and some other fun people at a Peruvian restaurant. So that was kind of fun. All right. So John's breaking the mold here, going with beer. Matthew, what do you got in front of you today?
I've got the Smoke Wagon. You can see right, cover my face here. There we go. It's the uncut, unfiltered version of Smoke Wagon, and it's actually really, really good. I like this one a lot. I've had Smoke Wagon before, and it's decent, but their uncut, unfiltered version just tastes better to me. So it's a good one if you can find it somewhere. I've liked it a lot.
Yeah, if you get that one, you can find it in Vegas quite often. I think that's where it's distilled. The uncut unfiltered is definitely commanding a premium online. It's hard to find, especially out here in the Midwest. So nice.
I haven't seen it since I got that one. I haven't seen it for a while.
So I am drinking Wolf Moon. This is a cheap bottle. I think it's $30 or $40, so it's kind of on the lower end. Billy Flips is high or something today. Hi, Billy. You're looking good yourself. For Wolf Moon, the guy that got me into bourbon, well, I mean, our developer did, but one of the guys, I stopped by at a gas station just to pick up some on a fishing trip with my brother up in Detroit, and went in and was like blown away. I'm like, that's more bourbon than I've ever seen in like basically like a small convenience store. And I just started chatting with the owner, or the guy at the counter, which turned out to be the owner. And I was like, we're running out. I'm going to grab something real quick. Said, I would love to just learn more about bourbon. Can I swing back by the store tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Well, his name is also Matt. Most good people are named Matt or John, or, typical New Testament names there. But Matt said, he's like, yeah, he gave me like 2 hours of his time. I bought, 30 or 40 bottles. I went crazy just starting off. And he explained so much of it to me. And this is one of the bottles I think he gifted me. He always gives me stuff every time I go up there now. But he gave me this bottle, said, you'll like it. It's a good one. Well, I looked it up. It's Wolf Moon. It's actually in collaboration with Jason Aldean, the country singer. And I think Florida Georgia Line is on the label as well. So it was when they were doing a tour together, and they were just, everybody's doing whiskey collaboration at this point. But they went and decided to make their own bourbon for kind of their tour, just to be enjoyed as they travel and just get to meet new people. And so that's Wolf Moon. So cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Cheers.
A good episode.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we dive into, I guess I should drink. You can't say cheers and not drink. That's rude, and you have to look each other in the eye as well. So, at any rate, before we dive into the meat of the show, we do have a little segment, which is what is new, or what kind of Amazon trends, or what did Amazon screw up recently. John, do you have anything you want to share there? Otherwise, we've got a little sneak peek into something. But
no, not really. I don't think a lot has changed in the last week or so.
I think it's one of those things where we just wake up every morning, we're kind of hesitant to pull up the phone and check and see what fees got added or what changed. But yeah, I think fairly stable. Restock limits are kind of staying stable in the US. I know our friends in Canada are feeling the pinch a little bit, but nothing really new there. I do think some shipping rates will be changing in the near future, but that'll be later this summer. The mileage rate, I guess this is something, July 1st, the mileage rate, since gas prices are going up, is going to increase, I believe, to 62 cents.
Wow.
So it'd be kind of weird. It's actually going to throw off our tracking spreadsheet, because historically, every year the rate changes, and it's just good for the calendar year. But the IRS just said it's going to be 62.5 cents a mile, up only 4 cents from the start at the beginning of the year. So not a huge change, but starting July 1, if you track your mileage, which you should, it's a non-cash deduction, which really helps. You can get a few extra cents a mile, which really won't offset the extra cost at the pump, but it's a nice gesture from the IRS. Something for Scout IQ customers, you may have noticed if your app auto updated, we had a little bit of server maintenance, planned maintenance on Saturday night, kept us up real late in the middle to the wee hours of the morning, as they say. And we have paved the way. If you check out our web portal, app.scoutiq.co, that looks a little bit new and shiny and updated, as well as the app has updated. It's a more modern design with the tray. I see Flippin' Fave was commenting on that. It's just a more standard, logical operation in terms of where it is. For those that have smaller phones, we'll continue to tweak the design a bit to help everything fit appropriately on your screen. But check those out. Again, the look and feel should remain roughly the same, but we've rebuilt the entire front end, back end, some of the cloud interface as well. And we'll be doing a live unrelated to this. We don't want to kind of distract from our good friend John here, but we'll be doing some premieres or a live later to kind of roll out some new features, and be sure to check back off. And we're going to keep adding to that. So if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please do that. We always say like and subscribe, but you can subscribe. And then I think there's a bell. If you go to youtube.com/ I think the Book Flipper community, or just find our channel here, there's a little bell icon. You can actually click that or tap it if you're on mobile and get notified when we do go live. So check that out. Junkman says, mark me as present with a tardy. Did you do demerit system in high school, John?
Yes.
So we had those. They were little pink slips, and once you got 5, I think it was, you had to come to detention. Did you guys do something similar?
Yeah, it was definitely similar to that.
All right. Well, Junkman, we'll waive it today. We're in a forgiving mood, and probably the longer we're here and the more we drink, the more forgiving we're going to get. So we're glad to have you here. So that's a little bit of an update. If you're not in the Facebook group, join that. We'll be sharing stuff in the Book Flipper community as well as Scout IQ. But again, completely redesigned app from the ground up. It looks very similar, a little bit more modern, but that's just the beginning. We've got a pretty good foundation that we're going to build on, and we can't wait to get into some of those details. So at this point, we're going to move to the meat of the interview. So John, you had a day job. So let's go all the way back several years ago before Amazon. Walk us through what you were doing, what your goals were in life, that sort of thing. I know you like to write down a lot of your goals, but let's go back in time. I don't want to say little John, that sounds weird, but 4 or 5 years ago, before Amazon existed for you.
Yeah, so basically I was a full-time copywriter. I moved to Pennsylvania about 10 years ago. I'm originally from New York. I went to school around here, so I had a lot of friends here, was always coming back. And then I just hit up my best friend one day. I was like, yo, I'm thinking about coming back. He had a house. I was like, would it be cool if I crashed with you, see if I liked it? And he's like, yeah. So then I just kind of picked up and everything worked out. But I was copywriting, and basically when I first got the job, we kind of made a deal. Hey, like we'll pay you X amount. If you do a good job in the first 3 months, we'll give you like what you're looking for. I'm like, okay, cool. I did a good job, got that. And then when they were giving yearly raises, they were like, we already gave you yours. And I was like, no, like that's not, like it was based on perform, like that's not how it went. And right then and there, like it clicked. I was like, I can't have someone else in control of this. Like whether it's fair or not, or like how that was laid out, I was just like, I need to be in control. My dad always owned his own business, so I always worked for him. He had a bunch of restaurants and stuff like that.
So what were you expecting a certain raise based on your peers or just what's normal?
Just what's normal. Like we basically was just like, I wanted a certain salary, and they're like, well, like let's see if you work out first, and then we'll give it to you. And then like the year came around, and they were like, no, we already gave it to you. So it was kind of a sneaky play on there.
Yeah. Well, was it going to be substantial? Because one of the challenges when I worked corporate was you work your tail off, and they always had like a company multiplier and then an individual multiplier. So if the company did great and you just did average, you still got a nice bump. And if the company did great and you did, exceptional off the charts, you made just a little more than the other guys. So it kind of disincentivized you to work hard.
Yeah, no, it's like that.
Yeah. So, all right. So that was kind of your aha moment where you said, all right, I'm not going to keep working for the man, right? Working for the woman, whatever you want to say. So at that point, what did you decide to do, or how did you even figure out that you could do something on the side or eventually ramp into something full time?
So I was like a big Gary Vee fan. I still am. And I saw him doing the flea market thing. He was going to 3 flea markets. And I always had this like weird inkling that I don't know, like I could find something on like Craigslist or something like that and like definitely make money on it. Like it wouldn't be that hard. But it just always seemed like weird to me. I was like, that's kind of weird. Like, and then when I saw him going to the flea market and stuff, I was like, this millionaire is like going to these flea markets. I'm like, it's not weird. If he's like, it just, I don't know, something clicked. So I wanted to pick something that I could flip. And I just came up with like furniture. It might not have been like the best idea at the time because it's like really big and bulky, but it's something everyone needs and everyone's always trying to get rid of. And if you need it, most of the time you don't want to pay a lot for it. And people are giving it away. So I get like a table for $25, sell it for $50. And the idea was just to double what I paid for it. And then I eventually got like this huge table for my 1-bedroom apartment, which I had no idea why I would do that. But I just really liked it. And I needed more space to like store the furniture. And I was like, you know what? If someone gives me $250 for this table, like they could have it. And I paid $100 for it. And within 30 minutes, someone offered me $240. And that's what changed everything. I was like, I don't just have to double the money. Like I get much, much more. And then after I found that out, it was crazy. So I did like maybe 25 grand in the year, went home for Christmas, realized I can't sell the furniture if I'm in New York, and was looking for something else, came across a Reezy Resales video, started selling books from thrift stores, thought it was kind of crazy, but just did it anyway. And basically the first book I scanned, or one of the first that I bought, I can't even remember the name of it, but literally it scanned for like $40. And I looked at the back of the book and like the retail price was like $25. I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, this is really weird. And like 2 weeks later, it sold for 40. And then I just doubled down, kept going to stores, making road trips to like 2 to 3 hours away from me. And then I wanted to quit the job. Stuff was starting to go really well.
Let's pause real quick. Let's go back to the furniture. So were you fixing the furniture and like renovating it and making it look prettier, or literally just buying it from someone that needed it gone, solving their problem, and then waiting and finding a buyer?
Literally just buying it. Like so when I first did it, I was like, oh, maybe I'll fix some of it up. And I realized no one cared. Like they just wanted like the table. If the table is messed up, they would just be like, oh, I'm going to put a tablecloth over it anyway. Like, it doesn't matter. So, like, I just realized, like, no one really cared. Like, they're going to do what they're going to do with it. Or like, oh, we were looking for a junk table, like we're gonna restore it or do arts and crafts on it or whatever. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Now, did you have a truck or an SUV, or did you buy a trailer, or how did you start moving around big pieces of furniture?
I had a Jeep, so I had it down to about a science where I knew I could get. So I used to sell like a lot of pub tables. They were like very hot, so you could get them for like $100 and flip them for like 250, 300, like easy. And so when I would go, like I would take the legs off, I'd have like a Ziploc bag, put all the stuff in there. And so then I would start telling people, like when I was making offers to buy them, I was like, oh, if you could just take the legs off, put, the chairs on top of each other. So it literally took like 5 minutes to go in there, put it in there. And then, yeah, go. And then one of the biggest deals I did was an actual church was going out of business. And they had, I think it was maybe 10 or 15 tables. And I rented like a van, went and got those. And that was quite the adventure to store those in the apartment. But with that stuff, like literally the tables, the chairs, but you could sell it in a day. Like I knew they would be gone within the week.
Yeah. I love that story because one, Matthew and I joke about there's a market for anything, you can sell anything. And that proves it. I actually have a really good friend down in Florida who fixes up furniture. She paints it, she kind of tidies it up, and she's got a business partner down there. And they built a pretty substantial business like focused on that, which is pretty cool. So I love that you just jumped in and you said, hey, I don't have to have a physical skill or creative ideas or whatever. You just said, I'm going to find someone that needs a giant item gone, which those are hard to dispose of. And so you're literally walking in there, and I'm sure at some point you probably got some for free, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, all the time. Or people would be like, hey, like, would you want this chair or do you want this lamp? And I always just say yes, because like, oh, you've only got like $5 for it, like, who cares? It's an extra $5. Or I would ask, hey, do you have anything else? On some of the apps, I think Facebook definitely does it. You could like click to see what else they have. So if I saw a bunch of stuff, I'd be like, hey, I'll buy all the stuff and get like a really good deal. I'm like, I'll take all of it for me for X. So that's also a good move. If you could buy more than just the one thing, they're usually willing to make a deal. I know my parents, they moved about a year ago and they just wanted it gone and like give it away. Like, and people would come, like take this huge couch, like, and it was a big favor for them because like they didn't want to throw it away, like, but they needed it gone.
So for those that are on the fence, if they're afraid of reselling, or it sounds too good to be true, or it just seems like work and you don't want to figure out Amazon, I love the fact that you just got started. So there's free items out there. You can drum them up yourselves. You can walk around to garage sales, especially find a neighborhood. If you want to do this, find a neighborhood that, let's say the garage sale runs from 9 to 2. Go at 1:30. I guarantee anybody there that still has inventory left, sure, a lot of the good stuff is picked through. But if you say, hey, can I just pick up a bunch of this stuff for free and get it out of here, they're going to go, yep. Or hey, I'll give you $10 for whatever I can chuck in the back of my truck. They're going to say most likely, sure. Craigslist has a free option if you live in a bigger market. Facebook Marketplace has a free option or a marketplace area as well. So check those out and just experiment. You don't have to know much about categories or ideas. Just get out there and say, hey, if it's free, worst case, I lose some time and I've got to figure out how to throw this away. Best case, I make some money. And we like to, talk about ROI. And if you get something for free and sell it for anything, the ROI is kind of infinity, but your return on time is more important. So again, if you're sitting on the fence, I love, John, the fact that you just jumped in and figured out, hey, people want to get rid of furniture. Furniture is expensive new, so I can sell, a table for $250. It probably costs $800 to $1,000 or more new, and I'm able to do that and provide value. And if you're willing to look for value and be that middleman, that opens up a lot of doors. So that's pretty cool that you jumped in there. All right, back to books. So you still had your day job. You were doing tables on the side. And then you saw, you said Reezy videos and got into books?
Yeah, got into books, started flipping them, found out, unfortunately, I didn't start with Scout IQ, but I found out about Scout IQ along the way, started using your guys' stuff, consuming your content, talking to you guys, and yeah, just kept going from there. A lot of thrift stores, and then eventually I kind of got tired of just driving around, going to thrift stores. A lot more people were going to thrift stores around me anyway. And I was like, I'd rather do the bulk play. And yeah, that's a whole nother thing to bite off and chew. But I eventually found, I would say like a great tip is like if you are going to thrift stores and you want to get into bulk, um, everyone knew me there because like I spent a lot of money there buying books, and the pitch is really easy. It's just basically like, hey, I spend a lot of money at your store. I like to spend a lot more. Like, can I get these in bulk? So it was a real easy conversation. One thrift store said yes. I rented a truck, got it, got a storage unit. Most of them had like a first 10 days free or whatever. So I was like, I could definitely bang this out in 10 days. We ended up doing it in the day, so I didn't have to rent the truck again. And always have a plan to get rid of the duds. So the plan was we were going to get them, basically sort them in the truck, and then bring the truck to the Goodwill outlet, which took pallets. So doing it all in one day, like saves on the rental, solves a lot of problems. But if you get one or two people to do it, it goes pretty quick. And then, yeah, I found a supplier, worked out. The world went crazy, lost the supplier, found another one. And once, I quit my job probably 2 years ago. Talked to you about that. Ended up flipping a coin and figured out that it was time to go.
Let's talk through that one. This is kind of an
Yeah.
interesting psychological experiment. And to be honest, I'd never used this with myself. I just read about it and it made sense. And for some reason, when we were talking, and was that a Greg event? Where were we meeting? Maybe turn the
I
page.
think we cleaned out I think a bookstore in Philadelphia.
That's right.
Or
Yep. There was a
Philly
bookstore
area.
going out of business with Avery was there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I remember we'd met before. We were kind of talking through, where you were at on your day job and your business and ramping things up. And you were just hemming and hawing. You just couldn't make up your mind. There was a ton of indecision. I've been there. I've shared my story. I won't get into that right now. But in terms of like, I probably waited too long to quit my job because I'm a people pleaser. And I thought the company needed me, that I was important. What would my coworkers think? What would my family think? I had a quote unquote good job. And I eventually like edged into the decision and kind of finally like stepped up, and people were all like, they came up to me and said, take me with you. We're so jealous. We're so like, you're so lucky. And I once I got out and kind of spread my wings, so to speak, I kind of wished I'd done that earlier. Well, John, I remember you had a ton of indecision. We were talking through pros and cons and how to be analytical about it. And we just weren't getting very far. We talked about your numbers. I remember asking you, what does it cost to be you? And do you have enough to cover your expenses, not necessarily replace your income? And it kind of seemed like, hey, you were right on the cusp. We knew that if you jumped in full time, the money would be there. It might be a little bit of a stretch at times. But you remember the conversation. I said, all right, here's the deal. Go flip a coin. Should I quit my job? Heads, yes. Tails, no. And what happens psychologically is as soon as you flip that coin and it's up in the air, a part of you kind of just immediately knows what you want the coin to do. So if you say heads, I quit my job, tails, I don't, as soon as you flip it, just intrinsically, you're like, oh, there's that dopamine rush of there's something cool about to happen. And if it's head, like you're like, I hope it's heads. That's your answer right there. So is that what you did? And was it?
Yeah, that was exactly it. I was like, if it's heads, I'm gonna quit. If it's tails, I'm just gonna stick it out. I knew I wanted to leave. The big holdup was like the company wasn't doing well, but it was coming around, and there was going to be a potential like $2,500 to $5,000 bonus, and I was like, that would be great because like that would just be like I already had 6 months expenses saved for me personally. I didn't have to take any money out of the business, and like another maybe 20-ish grand like for inventory and all that other stuff. And I was like, well, that would just really solidify the situation and there'd be like a no-brainer. And when I flipped a coin, it was heads. And I also, before I looked at it, I was like, I hope it's heads. And so I was like, this is definitely meant to be. And I think I texted you the picture. I was like, heads it is, like I'm out of here.
So that was a pretty cool moment. And I'm glad it actually provided clarity because I'd read that a couple places. I haven't actually tried it, but it's amazing what your like your brain psychologically already knows. Like we know the answers to a lot of things, and we just cloud them with all kinds of other information at times. Mike says, "Would you have still quit if it was tails?"
I don't know. That's a hard question because like it was more to determine, kind of to Kayla's point, like it would just solidify like I didn't want to be there anymore. Like, and it wasn't necessarily about the money. It was like I really hope it's tails. And then in the grand scheme of things, it's like, well, I can make the $2,500 probably in the first month, like if I really hustled. So it just really solidified it. Yeah, I don't know, probably. But I was going to quit anyway. It was really just to the end of the year. So I think it's right before the turn of the page in Atlanta, I think. I forgot when that was. But it was getting closer to the end of the year. Probably maybe another quarter left in the year, maybe.
Someone says you could have gone best 2 out of 3 if you didn't get the answer you wanted.
I feel like we were talking about this, the turn the page in Austin too. I think there was like a rooftop Airbnb thing. The 3 of us were sitting down at talking one time. Was this before or after you quit your job? Do you remember?
After
you quit your job? Okay, I think you just did that recently when we were talking about. Because I remember some of these conversations.
Yeah, it was probably like right after that, right around there.
Yeah, well, congrats on taking the step. So that was, you said, just before COVID, so probably the end of 19 is when you quit your job?
So when I quit, COVID was just kind of being like talked about. Maybe not. It was 6 months later and it was like, oh, right before Turn the Page, Austin, So it was right around there. I remember being in the airport with my girlfriend, and we're just like, everyone's wearing like masks. Like, what is going on here? And like some people at Turn the Page are wearing them, and I was like, ooh. And then we get back right after Turn the Page, and like boom, like everything shut down. Things got crazy.
That's a pretty scary time to quit your job then too, when things change.
Yeah.
Have you checked back in with your old job? Like, is the company still up and running? Are they doing well? How did COVID impact them?
They're doing well from what I understand. Actually, someone who worked there actually became my lister because we were like friends. And I actually posted on Instagram like, hey, I forgot how I said it. Like, oh, if you're ever looking for a job, hit me up. Like, I'm looking for a lister. And she's like, oh, I'd be so interested. I'm like, are you serious? She's like, yeah. And then so like it just worked out really well. But I think they're doing okay. They're a magazine, so trade pub. But a lot of their stuff is digital now. They sell data and stuff like that. So I think they're doing pretty good. I haven't really checked them though.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I'm glad you were able to make that leap. I'm going to talk through a little bit how you had the conversation, what the next steps you took. But Colt's been chiming in quite a bit. He had something interesting here that kind of fits. He says, I quit my job in May, end of April. I wasn't making enough to do so. So from, just from a pro-con perspective, maybe the money wasn't quite there yet, but my mental health wasn't good. I knew I didn't want to work for someone else anymore. I've never felt better. So Colt, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
And there's a lot of reasons to run a business. It's not always money. It's not always freedom. There might be, like in your case, mental health. Maybe you've got children and would prefer to be home. It doesn't always make economic sense. But the more you know your numbers, the more that you kind of network with those around you, there's no one way to run a business. You get to pick what's important and then sort of put the pieces in order to support that thesis or that idea. So Colt, I'm really glad. Hopefully your mental health continues to improve. And at this point, I like to joke and say I'm unemployable. John, you probably feel the same way. Like it'd be hard to go back and work a 9 to 5.
Oh God, yeah. And like I think one of the things that also solidified it, we talked a couple of times where like you could basically eat cheese doodles for like 7 or 8 months and you'd be fine. And you're not going to do that. And I was like, you're right. Like I'm not going to do, like it's all good. Like I'm ready to do this.
Yeah, it's kind of the Tim Ferriss, the Stoic school of thought is like, imagine what the worst thing that life would look like. And it's, I'd eat ramen noodles and whatever. And is that so bad to actually take a stab at it and try and set yourself up for the life that you want to live? And the answer is, well, no. Yeah. All right. So you had the conversation. Where you like walk us through just briefly what that conversation looked like, what your timeline was?
So for me, I knew I had a certain number in mind. I am not one, like, I'm obviously like very like, optimistic that like things will work out, but it's also like a big decision. Like there's lots you have to figure out, health insurance. Luckily I have a girlfriend, so like, we share like a living space. So like there's kind of a little fallback there. And it was literally like I didn't want to quit the job and then like be strapped for cash and just make a bunch of bad decisions because I'm trying to make money so fast. So I wanted like 6 months runway. The plan was so I think something that was really important that I don't know, maybe it was for me, was to take money out of the business account, what you would pay someone, what you'd pay yourself, because it definitely feels differently. You're like, oh yeah, no problem. I'll take $5,000 out of the account. Like, no big deal. Like, whatever. Like, actually do it. Like, you could transfer it back. It's not a big deal. But once I did that and the account like continued to grow, I'm like, okay, like that feels like that's fine. And so doing that, I was like, okay, like things are fine. I had like 6, 7, 8 months to go, a lot of capital in the account. So I was like, okay, like it's definitely time. And it was just like, whatever. If it doesn't work out, I can get another job. There are other options. I knew that if books didn't work, I knew how to sell on Facebook Marketplace. And to make what I need to make would be like real simple until I found another job or figured out the next step, I guess. But yeah, that was kind of the timeline. And then, yeah, I was so happy I did it.
Yeah, I remember talking to you and talking through how much, does it cost to be John? And we won't share those numbers necessarily, but it's a really important question. If you have a day job, the beauty of a side hustle, and by the way, you're probably going to have to change your Instagram handle now that it's no longer a side hustle. But at this point, your brand is there.
Yeah.
But one of the things, if you can keep your standard of living incredibly low, and not saying you have to pinch pennies everywhere, but if you can kind of keep a smaller engine that doesn't require a lot of gas, we've used that analogy before, that allows you to say, hey, I'm either going to live below my means and start saving, which then gives you that 6-month, 8-month, 9-month runway to say, hey, even if the business doesn't bring in a penny, and a lot of businesses don't make money the first year, flipping businesses tend to be a little different. They're still inventory based. It still takes time to build it up. But in general, your margins are good enough that you can spend, $100 on a table, turn it into $250. Now you can buy, 2.5 tables with that. So it allows you to ramp up quickly. But the more you can live below your means and stack cash, or have your means be where they are with your regular day job and have a side hustle and use that to stack cash, that allows you to have that safety net. And like you said, if it didn't work after 6 months, you can always go back. Maybe not to the same job. You shouldn't, cuss your boss out and get a limo and make a big deal about quitting. Maybe that job's still there for you, but don't burn bridges. But worst case, you can always go back and work for somebody. It's not the end of the world. Best case, you're able to pursue whether it's mental health, freedom, money, etc.
And I'd say one other thing that I did that was super helpful was I took a whole week off and pretended I worked for myself to get a feel for like how that would be. And I did it twice, like one in like the winter and then once in the summer. Like the winter one went like really good. I'm like, well, it might not be like this all the time. And then I did it again in the summer. I was like, okay, this was good again. And like, I was totally fine with it. Like knowing what it would feel like, what would I do? And I was like, wow, I really, really like this.
Fantastic.
That's really smart. I like that.
Yeah. So along those lines, what did you do? So I'm guessing it was probably a Monday was your first day of being, unemployed or self-employed. What did your first Monday look like? Do you remember that?
My first Monday was, I think I just did a huge sourcing trip in possibly Maryland. I knew like a bunch of thrift stores there. I went there. I think I stayed overnight and then like hit all the stores on the way back. Had a great trip. And yeah, just kept kind of rotating. That was probably the other thing that I learned with bulk. So when I was doing just cherry picking, I had maybe 7 to 8 areas that I would go to, rotating like every weekend. Like I would go somewhere. But then like when you're full time, like that rotation really tightens up and there's not necessarily the same good inventory there. Like it doesn't like stack up. So I was like, like I might need like to get a bulk source unless I want to travel further out or I mean, you could get creative. I mean, you do a lot of consignment and stuff like that, or free book pickups. But I really kind of wanted to get into bulk and start having this stuff like come to me and be almost more in control of how much I could sell on Amazon or break into eBay and stuff like that.
Yeah. So one of the pieces, we'll get to how you scaled up and look at your bulk business, and then on to online arbitrage. But you mentioned that you kind of gave up that $2,500 bonus by quitting your job. I saw, and I think we talked about it, one of the Turn the Pages, but you sold a book not that long ago on eBay for $2,200, I think. So walk us through that one, because one book essentially, I mean, there's fees and stuff on there, but one book almost made up for your entire bonus. So walk us through that.
Yeah, so it was a Black Laws dictionary, and Black Laws, I mean, you could speak to it, but probably like the standard in like law textbooks. And I started selling on eBay probably right when the pandemic happened as like a way to diversify, kind of make some more money on like kids' books and groups of books and stuff like that. And kind of really liked it. And I was like, oh wow, like this looks old. Like it, I don't know, I just got like a feeling about it. And then sure enough, when I opened it, it said like first edition. I was like, like I don't know, Black Law, like it's popular, but like I don't know, like this first edition. And turned out like there were comps it was selling for I think 2,500, 3,000. I talked to Max about it. He like looked at it and he was just like, yeah, like I think you got it. And then I think it sold within 4 to 6 weeks ish. I think I had it for maybe, I think it was $27.50 and ended up getting 25. Talk about stress, like shipping that out, like got all the insurance you possibly could, like triple, like the whole deal. And it got there and no issues.
Yeah. So eBay fees are what, roughly 10%?
Yeah.
So on you said you got $2,500 for it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So $250 goes to the man, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or I don't think Meg Whitman's still the CEO, but whoever it is,
I don't know.
you know, they took their fee and you made over $2,000 net. And that's a book you found in a bulk source, right?
Yeah, and crazy to think that it is so weird to me that like that was in a Gaylord. Like if anyone doesn't know what a Gaylord is, it's a huge box of books, about 800 to 1,000. If you can't visualize it, like think about the supermarket where they have like watermelons or pumpkins in, like that's basically a Gaylord. That it would hold up and be in such good condition, like the chances of that, especially after being like dumped onto a table. But I guess I just got lucky.
And you trained your eye to look for that. So for those that don't know Max, check out episode 5 of Books and Bourbon. Max Ruback is out of Florida. He's an antiquarian expert, not a collectible books. He likes the word antiquarian, but he's got actually a program, and there's a link from there. Maybe Matthew could throw it up there as well. But he's got a program. If you don't want to deal with selling the old books, or if you want to learn more about how to identify those, he's a phenomenal resource. So check that out, thebookflipper.com/Dusty. Kind of a bourbon term. We refer to old bottles as dusties. And of course, books get dusty as well. But as John said, books are resilient. And one of the cool things, one of the reasons I love books, one, it's got a great community. Two, it's got, you know, a lot of data behind it. We've done a lot of research there, and I love numbers, and it's fun to try and, you know, run a smarter business. And there's millions of books and millions of data points, and it's just a phenomenal challenge to try and solve. But probably the best part of books is there's this element of the thrill of the hunt. There's the fun element, the dopamine rush of you don't know what you're going to find. And every day you go out and you pound the pavement and you look for sources and you try and network and you're digging through Gaylords and you don't know what you're going to find. In our Facebook group, we see probably once a week someone, you know, holds up a book and they open it up and there's pictures of $100 bills in there. And it got crazy. Some people started taking that a little too far to the point where someone was like, I think someone posted a picture, and of course it was a polling type thing, but it had a stack of like, you know, $20 bills this large. That like, yeah, this came out of this tiny book, right? So the stack of bills is larger, and that led to people taking photos of an open book in front of an RV and saying, "Hey, I opened this book and an RV fell out." That was probably one of the better threads I've ever seen on our Facebook group. So we need to bring that one back.
Was that the same thread? Someone posted a picture and everyone's like, "I'm pretty sure you just found drugs in your book."
That does happen too. I don't know if it was that one, but it's you never know what you're going to find. And we like to say that, Ben just said he found $1,100 in a book.
Wow.
Typically old Bibles, people like families will store $100 bills in there. I don't know why it's Bibles, just because they know that that's where they can go find it. But, you never know. And it's crazy to think, one, from talking to Max, all the old books that we've thrown away in the history of doing books that I'm sure are worth, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there's books that I'm sure we just, we scanned them. They weren't worth anything online. So we, recycled them. And I guarantee there was money in some of them that we missed because we don't open every single book. It's not really feasible. So that's, it's fascinating, but that's what drives me for sure. It's that excitement of, I don't know what I'm going to find today. And we hope that, for those that go out, whether it's a side hustle or whether it's a full-time gig, hopefully, that's one of the shared bonds that unites all of us. We like to say that one source can make your year. And I really believe that's true. One call, for those that have been following this channel, I need to put some stuff up on Instagram, but we got our books last Friday. So there was a gentleman reached out through our consignment program. He said, hey, my father-in-law passed away. Mother-in-law is still alive. She wants all the books gone. She wants to make sure they don't get thrown away. This was life work, collecting a lot of history. I think a lot of religion, like really good stuff, a lot of collectible stuff. So I'll be working with Max. And sometimes I would fly out and go look through the collection, although they wanted it all removed. And so I actually hired a moving company. It cost me like $1,500 to go in, load up everything. They're all boxed up, and I got 5 pallets, so probably 5,000 books sitting in my warehouse. So I'll be going through those and sharing. That source probably won't make my year, but it's definitely going to make my quarter. That's going to be a phenomenal just bump, even with the expense. I'll kind of share some of the numbers as we go through it. But one book can make your day. One source can make your year. And we're just all, one chance, so to speak. I'd much rather play the lottery by running my own business than play the actual lottery. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that too. Someone donated probably 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, like 2 Gaylords full. They cleaned out their dad's house. They're all conspiracy theory books, and a lot, probably like $20,000 worth of books.
Yeah,
but still selling through it. Just crazy.
And what did you pay for that?
What?
Did you pay for that collection, or are you doing consignment?
No, they brought it all in, and I just dumped it into Gaylord's when they brought it in.
That's phenomenal. Jesse says they had a night shift manager found $800 in a book, and then $200 the next night. Jesse, do you share that? If you have an employee that comes forward and says, "Hey, I found this money," how do you chop that up? I know a lot of people will keep half and give half to all of the employees. Curious what you do with that as well. A lot of people are coming up with things they found. That's kind of the fun part here, and we all have those stories. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Should have had this up and running. So, John, does this look familiar?
Oh, it does. Yeah.
This is right before COVID. CNBC, like a reputable news source or very business-oriented news source, did a thing on like retail arbitrage. So, online arbitrage, entrepreneurs make serious bank doing what they love. Someone was doing clothes. They kind of interviewed a couple of different entrepreneurs, and we scrolled down. And I remember seeing this, and I was like, I know that guy. So you got featured by CNBC. How did that happen? And did that impact your business at all?
So, yes. So it's really funny. Like, you just never know in life what's going to happen. So when I was in New York, I used to throw out these like mixer events, networking events. I used to have a blog about networking, how that's almost the best way to find a job. So we do these margarita mixers. So like once a quarter, like we'd find like a tequila bar, like get a deal with the bar for like a good rate, start an Eventbrite, and just put it out there. And like whoever could come, and that would be great. And a person who came worked at CNBC, and we became friendly because they had a blog. So we'd like share tips or whatever. And basically I posted on Instagram, I forgot what it was. Maybe I might have been $100,000 mark for like the year for books, or maybe the whole year being full first time. I don't even remember. And they saw it and they DM'd me. They're like, can I share this with like the editor at CNBC? We're kind of doing a story about this. I'm like, yeah, sure. Like whatever. Didn't think much of it. And then she DM'd me. She was just like, hey, like they want to do this story, like, can you do an interview? And then we did an interview, and she asked, like, hey, do you use any tools, or like what's the tool you use every day? And I was like, well, Scout IQ, like that's what I scan with. And yeah, so they're like, can we link it? I'm like, yeah, sure.
I know Matt, that made Matthew happy. Thank you for sharing the love for sure. And I know that Matthew probably got some nice little SEO juice from getting a reputable source like that. That really helped our site. So we do appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's fun seeing those stories in the news, and a lot of times it's like, well, yeah, sure, someone's making money doing this, and it's pretty cool when you page through it and go, I know that guy. So thanks for sharing that. We asked Jesse what he does with the money if he finds it. He says, yeah, we have a bonus that we give our employees. Ben, another bulk warehouse guy, says I share it with the employee that found the money. I like this from Kreider. Says we cover a company dinner and split the rest across the team, no owner share. So that's pretty sweet.
Cool.
And Jesse says they put a lot of the cash in the company party fund. So in general, it's pretty good habit. John, do you have something you do with because you have an employee or two? If they find money, what do you do?
We've actually never found that much money. We found like a $2 bill. We found some foreign currency. But when they found some like really rare book, so they do like the eBay research as well. And they really went deep on this and found it. And it was like, I think it was like a $500 book, and it sold for that. So I gave them $100 as like a thank you for like kind of going the extra mile. Yeah. So that's kind of, I always wait for it to sell eBay. Just as Amazon, nothing is guaranteed. You look at comps, it doesn't mean it's going to roll around again. But yeah, once they sell, yeah, try to figure out a creative way, or at least do something that makes sense.
Well, it's kind of cool because you were in that job and they didn't give you the raise that was promised. So you now have that option as the boss, as the man, to be able to say, hey, I'm going to treat my people better than that. And that's a good thing. So good on you. All right, so you're ramping up books. You're kind of doing the redneck bulk operation out of the back of a truck. At what point did you got some space? You mentioned a storage unit, and walk us through how big did you ramp that up? How big is your team? And then we'll kind of close that chapter and talk a little bit about online arbitrage before we wind things down here.
Yeah, so basically I had storage units. I had a 10 by 30 unit, and it was rough. Like, summers suck because it's really hot. Winters suck because it's really cold. But one of the hardest parts about a storage unit is, especially when you're doing bulk, you have to keep everything moving. So like I have someone drop off the books, like I have 2 or 3 days to get through them. Then someone who takes them to recycle them comes. So like if any of those people cancel or like you're not ready, you're kind of screwed because like you need to clear it out and get them back in. So I ended up getting a second one just as a backfall in case something like that happened. And then it just got to a point where it was taking me about probably 2.5 hours to do one Gaylord, which is so ridiculous. I mean, if you're in a storage unit, it's really not that bad. But like I could do one now in about 45 minutes, an hour, maybe, with a dumper table and like a tilter. So I was like, oh man, if I could scale up, I could start getting like truckloads and stuff like that. All that stuff kind of went through my head. So I was like, oh, I'm going to start the search for a warehouse. And it was so hard because I didn't want like 5,000, 6,000 square feet. I wanted like 2,000, 3,000. And the realtor's like, it's impossible. Like, we're not going to find it for you. Pretty much everyone said that. And it was getting frustrating. And one day I randomly went on Craigslist and saw like this 5-day garage. I was like, like this, there's no way. And so I reached out to the person. They're like, hey, like, yeah, you want to come see it tonight? I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And literally go through, I'm like, holy, like, this is the perfect spot. Like, it just had everything that I needed. It's like pretty much brand new. It was like so cheap compared to like what I was looking at. It's just like, it was basically like a guy's storage unit. Like, he just had antique cars, like basically probably went there on the weekend, like just hung out, whatever. So yeah, then I kind of just ramped it up. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing now. We kind of really cut back a little bit when restock limits happened. And that's kind of when I started to look into online arbitrage. While I do love books, I do think there's a huge market. I think when COVID happened, everyone started buying stuff through there. I mean, me included. I was just like, wow, like there's so much other stuff on there, and there's a lot of other stuff you could sell. And I was like, I kind of want to like dabble in this and like see. And then it was kind of like once you get like a taste of it, part of the issue was I'm obviously on the smaller side where like we're doing like 10 to 12 a week. Um, and it's super small where like if I'm in Miami, like hanging out with you guys, like there's really not someone here shipping out merchant fulfilled books, and like they can kind of do it, but like not really. So I kind of wanted the ability to work from anywhere, and that's kind of what got me like the online arbitrage itch. So I've really been growing that part of the business.
Now, are you shipping to your own warehouse since you have the space, or are you leveraging a prep center?
So I'm leveraging a prep center because it would almost be nearly impossible to do books and prep all the units. And to be honest, it's really almost free because of the tax savings. So if I bought like, I don't know, a case of beer for like $100, I'd have to pay $6 more. Or I could send it to the prep center, pay $100, and they charge me $1 to prep it, and I make an extra $5, and I didn't do anything. Obviously, you have to trust them, and there's like some stuff there, but for the most part, once you find a good prep center, I would say that's definitely the route to go.
Yeah, and plus I heard you kind of hinted at it, but you said you wanted to build a business that would let you live or travel or work from anywhere. And if that's your goal, again, you want to build the business to support your goals, not the other way around. And so if that's your stated goal, then even though you have the warehouse space, you don't want to build that infrastructure there. It makes more sense to do a center where you literally could be in Costa Rica, clicking around and letting the orders roll into your prep center and running the business that way.
Yeah, that's kind of what I kind of realized too was I wanted to do bulk, and like obviously you don't know until you know, but once I saw like how I had to scale it and what that would require, and it's not because like I'm not a hard worker or whatever. That's just not what I wanted. Like I didn't really want to like we did a truckload or two, and unloading that without a dock, I was like, this is just a terrible idea. I would not recommend that to anyone. And that's kind of like when it clicked. I'm like you can make this work, but like I don't really want to. And that's kind of when I started to think more and kind of diversify a little bit to try something else.
Yeah. So again, you faced that decision where you had to say, "Hey, I'm going to start switching gears here." But almost like you did when books was the side hustle, I'm guessing you treated online arbitrage as the side hustle. So did you carve out money and say, I'm going to give myself kind of this test fund? What was the process of starting to dabble, so to speak, in that world?
So it was actually almost a blessing in disguise because what would happen was when restock limits hit, I stopped buying books because I was out of space. I could merchant fulfill, but just because you can merchant fulfill doesn't mean I'm not at the scale at someone like David who could sell a book for $4 or $5 or $6. Like I don't have those rates or whatever. So I just basically stopped buying books because I had nothing to do with them. My recycler stopped picking up because they couldn't get help. They were closed down. So I was like kind of stuck. So I wasn't really spending money on book inventory. It was just kind of sitting there. So I had a good bit set aside to kind of get up and rolling. I started probably November. So I hit Q4. It was the ideal situation. I hit Q4. Everything was amazing. It was great. But then like once Q4 ended, like you get that same buying mentality and it doesn't work after Q4. But then textbook season was January. So like I had the best of both worlds. But yeah, so I had a lot of capital to deploy. So I was just using that and kind of keeping the books afloat, just kind of doing what I could. And now online arbitrage is probably about 75%. Books is maybe 25%.
Awesome. So will you try and keep building the systems? One of the things I talk about is startup, scale up, and then step back. You're now kind of in that step back part of the book business and online arbitrage. You've tested the waters, and now you're saying, hey, we're going to try and scale this up. And, we'll have an interview in a year or two, and I'm sure you'll be on to another idea or two. That's kind of the way entrepreneurship works. What's your goal with books now that it kind of runs on autopilot, so to speak? Are you going to leave the pieces in place and keep that as sort of an income stream, or do you see yourself winding that down at some point?
I'm definitely going to wind that down. I have the warehouse until February. So I think I'm probably going to call it. It just got a lot, not harder, but obviously labor is more expensive. My books are up like 2 cents, like because of gas. It's just crazy. Like to go from 5 cents to 7 cents, and Amazon fees go up. So now there's less you can send there or less you can merchant fulfill. And if you're getting a truckload, it doesn't hurt as much, but we're not. So there's
you're kind of in that awkward middle ground where you've got to make it.
Where it was working well, but once everyone raises their fees and things get more expensive, it's like it makes it much more harder to operate.
Yeah, and there's a good business lesson in there. The smaller you are, the more nimble you can be. And as fees change, you simply say, hey, I'm going to raise my target profit, 50 cents up and just buy fewer books, but buy the right ones. When you have a warehouse, we talk about that engine analogy, you've got an engine that requires a lot of gas. And so whether you maximize the space or not, you're paying utilities, you're paying internet, you're paying for the lease, of course. You've got employees in there. You've got all those things that are factored into it. And if you're able to maximize and push through and get to that next level or that bigger beaver pond, I think we've talked about that, where if you want to dam off more resources, once you start buying by the truckload, now your costs go back down. You start getting an economy of scale. But when you're stuck in the middle and the market changes, that's sort of an awkward spot to be. And then you've got to decide, am I going to commit to this and figure it out and dam off more of an area and grow this pond? Or is it time to say, hey, let's just dial it way back, if that makes sense, or close the door and ramp up into something else. So I love that you're thinking strategically about that as well.
Yeah, I would also say it's really probably one of the mistakes I made was playing in the middle too long. I should have probably decided to just do online arbitrage. I had this one where online arbitrage went really well. I kind of shut off books, and then the book account went way down, and panicked. I was like, oh, I got to keep doing books, and then that really hurt the OA. I'm like, I just can't do both at the same time. So I'm like, it's going to be focused on OA. That's kind of what I want to do in the future. And books, it's just going to have to be what it fits in to the overall mix.
And Manny says he's in the exact same part. He's not sure he wants to take on full trailers. Depending on where you are, I know a lot of people have kind of sweetheart deals where they're getting books really cheaply. Sometimes they're delivered for free. If you've got access to it and that makes sense to do the baby bulk operation, that's a phenomenal place to live. But yeah, understanding your numbers. I love the fact that you took your profits from your first job, rolled them into books. Then you took your profits from the books and were able to use that to kind of seed fund or kind of kickstart that next journey, which was online arbitrage. So again, keep being smart about it, keep living below your means, and start carving out some revenue there from the online arbitrage. And I'd be curious to see what you find to dump that into next. And that's sort of the evolution. I had a couple questions related to it. Matthew, anything stand out? I had a question
related to online arbitrage or his bulk business.
Either, but just kind of that journey. I'm going to see if I can go back and capture that thought just a second.
So when you got your warehouse, I noticed it was a really good deal. Did you have to sign a super long lease with it? Because I know it's one of the problems a lot of people run into is commercial space is often super long leases. I found that when I was looking for space out here. Did you run into that? Or since it was more of a private party, was it pretty easy to negotiate with them?
Since it was a private party, it was really easy to negotiate with him. He was just kind of a guy who had extra space. It was like, hey, I get this extra money. I'm not really using the space. When I was doing the commercial, you had a guarantee 2 or 3 years. And they were just there was some stuff I was like, well, this is really going to hinder operations. Is there a way to not have this right here? They're like, oh yeah, they'll do all the construction, but you got to stay for 5 years. I'm like, no, that's not going to work for me. And yeah, it's really scary to commit. When you sign on that dotted line saying, hey, you're giving us X amount of money, you're like, oh wow, that's a lot of money. You think about it in a month, but then when you're signing for the year, you're like, oh wow, that's a big number.
Yeah, definitely. That thought come back to you, Caleb?
Has left me. It's playing hide and seek and it's winning. So if it pops back up, we'll get there. Cool. Well, at this point, we do have one last segment, which we call the Geek Out Moment of the Week. We'll get to that in just a minute. For those that do have questions, if you want to ask John anything from his day job and how he went through that process of quitting to ramping up books to now where he is with online arbitrage, if you do have questions, post those. We will do a rapid fire round where we take a bunch of those questions and ask him. If you are too shy to leave comments, that's okay. You can listen in and gather some intel from other people. Let's jump into the Geek Out Moment question as you guys are leaving comments either here or on Facebook. Looks like most of the comments now are coming in from YouTube. I don't know. Actually, I don't see anything from Facebook, so I don't know.
Facebook reach has not been good recently. YouTube does a lot better at notifying people and pushing it out. Facebook's been, interesting.
Interesting. I remember when going live was like the secret to get our Facebook group to kind of grow, and maybe Facebook's moved away from it. We probably have to jump into Reels and whatever else all the cutting edge stuff is to
going live on Reels next week, everyone.
There you go. So we have a geek out moment, and it's not necessarily related to business. Matthew loves self-help and personal development type stuff. John, actually, I think you're into coffee, but I don't know a lot about what you're into. What are you geeking out about recently, whether it's business or life or just food or something?
Actually, probably craft beer. I love craft beer. This is like the season for it. We'll go on a couple trips to different breweries. But actually I forget what episode it was, but you mentioned Notion. So I kind of went down the rabbit hole, signed up, and I'm kind of building. Well, I don't really even know what I'm building, but for online arbitrage, there's just a ton of stuff that's all over the place with Google Docs and websites and so much stuff. And I really think there's a huge opportunity to kind of get that in one place. So I've been really trying to figure that out and watching videos on it and trying to figure out. I actually came across something that I didn't even realize. I don't know if I would do it, but like people sell like templates of their Notion. So I was like, that's pretty cool. Like I never even thought about that. And I think there's a huge need for just, even in book selling, there's just a lot of stuff all over the place that needs to be tracked. So to have it in one spot would be super ideal.
Yeah, there's actually another interview guy I follow does podcast. It's called Return on Podcast. I was on his show a bit ago. If you follow podcasts, it's out there. I think it's on YouTube as well, but most of their content's really designed for the audio portion. But one of the guys he interviewed was Trent Deersmid, who's an entrepreneur kind of in our space as well. But he has an app called Flowster. You might want to check that out. Flowster. And it's literally software for setting up. I haven't played around with it yet. I just heard about it on the podcast. So I'm going to give you, just like I gave you the quarter trick that I never tried myself, I'm going to give you this one. But Flowster, I think it's flowster.io maybe.
All right, flowster.io.
Yep. Or flowster.app, but flowster.io goes to there as well. And the idea is like documenting your business or setting up those SOPs. And they kind of developed the software that allows you to go around and click on the screen. I love Loom. I know Matthew does too. Loom actually does speech to text. And so it takes your text and actually writes it all out, similar to Otter. I think I mentioned that one before. So that's a fun one to use. It tracks your clicks. I think this actually builds the systems where every time you click, it kind of like edits those clips out, makes it really easy to build that instead of going back and editing or having your VAs do it. So as you're getting into that and all the SOPs, you might want to check out Flowster because there's so many ways to just be more efficient as well.
It does look pretty cool.
So there's a fun one for you. Matthew, what are you geeking out over these days?
For some reason, this is a thought in my head right now. This has nothing to do with business, but we always talk about how you can make money doing everything. It always surprises me when you go down a rabbit hole and find this whole community you just didn't even know existed that way. So we just got grass finally in our backyard. We had a new build, so it was all dirt in our backyard forever. So we finally got some grass back there. And I was looking on YouTube for some tips to help the grass do a little bit better. And then I ran into all of these YouTube channels with hundreds to millions of subscribers that are just dads talking about lawn care and all the things. And they have their own branded fertilizers and their own clipping shears and all these just things. And people are just geeking out completely over their lawn care and striping. And I went down this rabbit hole a little bit of looking at some of this stuff. And It's just crazy to see these like little communities that you didn't know really existed of people that just love lawn care and people that subscribe to it with millions of subscribers and their own branded stuff. And it's just so cool to see that pretty much whatever people's passions are, they could figure out a way to monetize it if they want to. And there's definitely an audience. I never thought there'd be millions of subscribers. I could figure maybe a couple 100,000, but millions of subscribers just on dads taking care of their lawns type thing, which is kind of cool. So it is just my reminder this week that you really can make money doing a lot of things if you just have a passion for it and figure out the different avenues of getting content to people that are looking for it.
I am unfortunately geeking out on business banking apps. For those that follow, we've been from Aslo to, I think I tried Mercury for a bit. We settled on Brex. It was awesome. They just, from everybody, they just said, or not everybody, but we had 5 accounts and I kept 2 and lost 3. And I use those for everything. They allow you to pay people for free. You can mail checks. There's like no fees for wires. Like, it's a really phenomenal business bank account. It was built, it's online only. So it's built in the 21st century. But they just said, hey, we're canceling some accounts. You don't fit our necessary criteria, whatever. And, you have till August 15 to, get out of here and transfer your money out. And it kind of came out of the blue. Their founder actually emailed again today. I don't know if you saw that, Matthew, but he apologized. He goes, hey, my dad ran a small business. I know that I owe you guys better communication. They actually outlined they wanted to see businesses with venture capital. They wanted to see businesses that were north of like $500,000 in cash in the bank or doing more than $1 million in transactions. And they claim it wasn't cost related. It wasn't like they were losing money on those customers. They said they want to hone in and serve a target niche, which I totally get. But we're going to be testing out new banks. So I'm looking at Bluevine. One of these days, I'll just go with a staple of blue blood like Capital One or Chase. But until then, we're going to keep experimenting with these online banks. So I'll be checking out Bluevine. If you know of good banks, let those know or check us out as well. The other thing I'm starting to toy with is just the idea of focus. So as entrepreneurs, we like to chase shiny. I've not gone down the path of doing online arbitrage. I've looked at it. I've spent a weekend here and there just kicking the tires. But I know that the more time I focus, the more I network in the book space, the more that continues to open up and the business is still growing. So for me, I've chosen to stay honed in and focused on a very small niche, even though Matthew and I talk about this too. Like, we decided to build Scout IQ, to build this community. We could have taken his marketing talents. We've got a couple of really talented developers. David is a really good people person. I'm still trying to figure out what my talents are. But we could have taken that team and tried to solve lawn care. We could have taken that team and gotten into, building a better mousetrap. We could have done anything. And in a lot of alternate universes, we might have ended up not in as good of a spot as where we are. But there's also other worlds where we would have ended up in a far better place than where we are. So it's always just an interesting idea. Is like, we always have that FOMO, or like, what if I had done something else? And the reality is we have what's in front of us. But every day we've got opportunities to pursue. I know, John, you're using our side project, Pallet IQ. You guys are doing bulk. Drop us a note, support@palletiq.com. We actually have .com there. But if you are doing bulk, we do have kind of an invite-only program that's pretty phenomenal. So that's kind of been fun. We've been working on that on the side, just more as a fun project to serve really who John is, kind of that baby seller. There's great resources for bigger bulk sellers. I know several people on here are using other tools. That's great. But we want to help support those that have kind of outgrown Scout IQ. And before the bigger players take them in, we like to be that middleman. But we have all these opportunities available. And the trick is, at the end of the day, a lot of times I feel like I played defense all day. And I was project managing our developers and talking to Matthew and trying to keep my warehouse going. And so the idea of focus is, how do I set up my goals in a better way? And if you ask me right now, what are my 3 or 5 year goals? I really don't have very many. I'm a little embarrassed to admit that. So I want to take a step back, figure out what those goals are, and then figure out how to actually make sure that what I'm doing every day, every week, every month, every quarter is sort of stacking up to those goals, kind of the concept from the book Traction. So for those of you, friendly shout out, that are in Denver, Matthew and David and myself will be out in Denver Sunday through like early Wednesday. So if you guys are out in the Denver area, hit us up. Maybe we can grab a drink. We're going to be doing some team meetings, kind of hanging out and just catching up over the old stomping ground. So if you are in Denver, drop us a line, caleb@thebookflipper.com, or you could find Matthew or myself on Instagram as well. So let's go through just a couple questions. John, I really do appreciate you being here. Thanks for sharing your journey. I hope it resonates well with a lot of people watching.
Yeah, me too.
And we'll go through just a couple questions here and then let you have the rest of your evening back.
Sounds
So
good.
someone says, can you repeat the name of the banking app? I'm checking out Bluevine, all one word.com. You can check that out. Somebody else says Novo, which is another bank we've tried. Banknovo.com, I believe, isn't good if you need multiple accounts. Bluevine allows you to have up to 5 sub-accounts, which is pretty nice. You could have all your Amazon deposits come into one. You could pay a credit card out of one if you want to kind of keep track of different accounts and automate things. That's pretty fun. What are some other questions? Someone says, just saw you on Be Cool. Are you still doing books? And I think you answered that. You
Yeah,
said
still doing books.
starting to phase out. Are you still using Be Cool for all of the online arbitrage repricing as well?
So I have two Amazon accounts, so everything's separate. So I opened a second one for media. So that is now the online arbitrage account. So I have 2 separate repricers. So Be Cool is for OA. I'm still using Reprice It and New Price, which is much better for books.
Yeah, and Reprice It has some of the automated pieces as well. Ben says, what software are you using for online arbitrage?
I'm using SellerAmp, which is great for reverse sourcing, and also tactical arbitrage, which is a little more advanced to scrape websites and whatnot. But manual seems to be the best way to find stuff.
Yep. See here.
Really? So even with those softwares, you still find yourself doing it manually a lot of the time to find some of the good things you found?
Yeah, I feel like the software definitely like skips over some stuff, and it's good. It's more that when you do stuff manual, I don't know, when you have your brain and like you kind of know what you know about Amazon, you can make some better decisions that might be skipped over, or there's some, if you set your profits to a certain number, it's just going to skip over that, and you might be okay with making, $3 because you could sell it 100 times versus the machine just be like, oh, you're not making $3 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I bet the software. I bet the software would be good at starting to figure out what to look for, and then after that, you kind of get in your head what you need to look for, and you're probably more skilled at doing that than software is at that point. So that's pretty cool to hear that.
Yeah, I feel like with the software, that's kind of the biggest opportunity where you see like you've never heard of a brand before, and you type into Amazon that brand, and that's kind of like manual sourcing, like, oh, what else does this brand have? Or they have bundles or different sizes or whatever.
That's cool.
It's interesting as you go down like the rabbit trails of anything, you just learn more. So when you start with books, you don't know where to begin. Now I'm sure you walk into a thrift store, you kind of you're drawn to certain sections and areas and top shelf and bottom shelf, and you kind of get into a rhythm of what works. And the same thing is true. I'm sure when you first start with SellerAmp and tactical arbitrage and the other tools, it's like drinking water from a fire hose. You just don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Kreider asked a very important question. Do you golf?
I do, not very well. I'm more a scramble person, best ball person, but yeah, I'm all right, but not great.
Well, any sport where you can drink craft beer while playing the sport is not a bad sport. Junkman says, do you lift? Of course they golf because you're on our channel. So do you lift weights as well?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Matthew, anything else? I'll see a couple of things, comments and whatnot.
I was coming back to the questions, but then we got the main ones there. So
well, Colt says he might drive to Denver. Well, reach out, say hey. We do have some downtime, of course, and we look forward to catching up with some of you all. Matthew, I've got a couple fun events planned. I'm kind of trying to pull the string so we can see what we can do, but we're gonna have some fun there in Denver, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
I found a random old duplicate key to our office. We should see if it still works. I'm just kidding.
Oh, we could.
I see what they've done with the place. I'm just kidding.
They still have the orange walls up there. I
know. I hope so.
Rest in peace. Well, Junkman says, thank you for the education and entertainment. Well, that's what we aim to be here for. Well, thank you for being here, John. Again, we do respect your time and appreciate that. Next week will be episode 10. We're going to reach the double digits. Remember, Alisa, one of our first guests, was bragging about, she was a triple figure Amazon seller. and then a 4-figure Amazon seller. She reached $1,000, and maybe she's at 5 figures at that point. So we'll see. And as we talk about her, there she is chatting. So Alyssa, are you at 5 figures yet? If not, how close are you getting? You've been going at this a couple months now, so that'll be interesting. Next week, guest will be coming to us from, actually, he's in multiple locations, but Salt Lake area is where he lives in Utah. So we got a fellow from Utah, really nice fellow. He's done some really interesting things in the buyback space, book donation bins, and now he's also dabbling in bulk. So he's a really sharp guy. We'll be looking forward to having him here for episode 10. If anybody has someone you'd like us to interview, ideally in the book space, but we're open to other spaces as well. But mostly books. Let's be honest, it's books and bourbon. So if you know anybody that would be a great candidate, Matthew's got some cool ideas. We're probably going to do one soon where we interview a cherry picker, someone that maybe has a scout team or does like library sales, and then a bulk seller, and kind of compare and contrast the business models for those of you that wants to sort that out. Alyssa says next month is your 5-figure moment. Well, let us know. We'll help you celebrate in style. Avery says we should have Fordnell on the show. We will try. He's a hard man to pin down. And one last question before we walk away. John, rub your crystal ball. Do you think Amazon will put caps on how much inventory we can send in again?
I don't think for essentials or stuff for Q4 related, possibly books. I don't think so. I mean, they're complaining that they have too much storage space. So unless they sell all that off, I don't know why they wouldn't just pack it with profitable inventory.
Well, there you have it. John's crystal ball says no. Of course, nobody knows. We will find out as we get to Q4. Anything kind of happens there as well. So thank you for everybody that's here. We'll raise our glasses one last time as a departing toast, and we look forward to seeing you all next Thursday for episode 10. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.